Hello, Renoites listeners. Welcome to Renoites. My name is Conor McQuivey. I am your host every single week. I'm super excited about this week's episode. I am talking to Oliver X, the marketing director for Artown. This episode is all about arts in Reno, Reno as an arts city. Oliver and I had a great conversation about Artown, challenges they faced last year with COVID and what they're expecting for this year, Burning Man's influence on Reno's art scene, public art, murals, sculptures, all kinds of great stuff about arts in Reno. Thank you so much for checking out the podcast today. Before we get to the interview, a quick reminder, this is still a brand new podcast, and I would love your help in spreading the word about it. If you enjoy this episode or any other, please do me a favor and share it. Put it on Facebook, share the links on Facebook or social media, let people know about the podcast in person, people you know in real life. Definitely need your help to let people know. I really appreciate all the support I've gotten so far. It's been a really great project, and I'm really excited about our guest today and all of our upcoming guests as well. So now please welcome from Artown, Oliver X. So Oliver X, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for talking to me today.
Well, thanks for having me. We're excited. Artown is coming. That's our ramp up tagline, and we're excited about the opportunity to even have art in public.
Yeah, I'm excited that I know there were some challenges last year with COVID, and I'm curious to hear about some of the changes for this year and what you see this year looking like. But for people who are not that familiar with Artown, it's probably a good place to start by just, if you could tell us what Artown is for folks that don't really know, people who just think, oh, it's that arts thing that we do in July. Can you give us a little bit of background on kind of what Artown actually is and how it works? And then tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do for Artown and kind of how you came to work in the arts world in Reno.
Well, thanks, Conor. Yes, my name is Oliver X, and I am Artown's marketing director. And it's been a great privilege to be able to serve the arts community. Prior to this, I was editor-publisher of Reno Tahoe Tonight magazine, which had a counterculture and artistic focus. So I'd been in stewardship and service to the arts community for about a decade. Prior to me actually joining a staff position, I was, prior to this, the outgoing chairman of the board of directors. And prior to that, I was vice chair. And before that, I was just a board member, and that started in around 2014. So Artown is a celebration of the arts in July that happens for 31 consecutive days, July 1st through 31st. That happens at up to 150 locations. 90% of the art that goes on as far as programming and live events and exhibits, shows, tours, workshops, ongoing classes, art openings, etc. All the whole gamut of art presentations. 90% are done by people themselves, artists themselves. There's artists produced, conceived, and presented. And what we do, Artown, we tell artists to pick a date, pick a concept, and do a show. And that show might be any number of hyphenated forms of public art in all genres, multidisciplinary. So of the 500 typical events we have, over 450 in an usual year, and this is not one of them, but in a usual year, we will have upwards between 497 and 525 events at 120 locations to 150, and Artown produces and programs about 50 of those at different host locations. This year, we're going to be at one singular location, and that's Rancho San Rafael Park, a regional park that's beautiful. Acres and acres of open space. It is a dog paradise. It is where the balloon races are. And it is one of the gems of the park system here in Washoe County.
Excellent. I did not know that about Artown, that most of the programming was kind of independently conceived and produced by artists.
Yes.
Is that, do you think, a good way to allow artists that are not that established or that are just kind of like branching out into creating these things? Like, how does that vary compared to something that's a little more designed and programmed to allow, more variety? What is the impact of that format on the Artown concept?
Well, if art is evidence and expression of our true selves, an outward expression of that, then art doesn't need permission. So we really want to keep the bar low for what we presume is art. And so that in itself is inclusive. I don't think we want to program at a community. We want to program with a community. So Artown acts as an umbrella, but we are the springs and the trampoline for you as far as your marketing and your exposure and your awareness of what you would do in your garage or what you would do at the local gallery. We then come in and market and give amplitude to that. And that's I think that has been the great success and endearing quality of Artown.
Awesome. Have you had experiences with artists who showed at Artown and it exposed them to new audiences and kind of elevated their profile?
Oh, yeah. I mean, when you think about the success of people like Tim Snyder, who evolved from Soul Jibe and who went on to work in festival and arena settings with Nako and Medicine for the People. When you think about the voices like Whitney Meyer, who was on The Voice successfully and started early on in her evolution and was embraced by Artown early on. And just there's so many success stories. It's been a great thing. And it is truly a way for people to be inspired by the arts, to participate and experience art in the community. Sometimes it's in your backyard. Your art is down the street from you. It's at Collin Ranch. It could be at any number of literally dozens of locations. And so that really makes it a citywide and countywide experience for people.
Yeah, I think of Artown as being also a kind of branding for Reno as an artistic city. I know Artown's been around for a little over 20 years now, something like that.
Yeah, this year will be our 26th year.
26, wow. Yeah, I always have thought of Artown as one of the big examples of Reno branding itself and showing itself as an artistic city. Like the tagline for our town is Reno is our town. You see on all the signs that I think sends this clear message that Reno wants to be and is a city with a lot of artists and a lot of art. From the origins of Artown, I know you weren't with the organization at the very beginning, but can you talk a little bit about kind of the story of Artown and why it was needed in Reno, or where the concept came from, and what the overall goals were kind of over the long term? Obviously, year to year, you're promoting artists and you're giving a platform to people, but what's the view of Artown for kind of like the big picture of an established arts festival that's year after year in a city like Reno? What's the story there?
Sure. And again, there were some early founders that were instrumental. Our executive director tells the story really well. It was really the brainchild of a few arts administrators, one of which was Karen Craig, and along with the city of Reno themselves. Back in the day in 1996, you could not actually go into the Truckee River, and downtown was a very considered an unsafe place, kind of unsavory and kind of scary for families. Certainly, the wild Truckee was not as inviting, having no river park. But once the establishment of the river park happened, and people were allowed to recreate in the river, the city fathers and mothers came up with this idea to have an arts event that might bring people back to downtown, which was once a thriving downtown back in the Rat Pack days and the days of the divorce capital of the world and throwing the ring tosses off of Virginia Bridge, etc. The Mapes. Wow, right? So those are the good old days. But fast forward to 1996, and it was a very different city. So rather than be foreboding, I think art was chosen as a more inviting means to bring people back, to rediscover downtown. And they concepted an event for, I think it was 3 weeks, and 30,000 people came. And so they said, okay, we're onto something. Let's do this. Let's keep doing this. And it certainly has been able to thrive with the proper stewardship and support of the city, which has been Artown's biggest supporter since day one. And we're really appreciative of them. They're very generous with their support of Artown, having conceived it themselves. And we've been really wanting to steward that belief and early incarnation and grow it from those 30,000 people to now over 310,000 people over the 31 days.
Awesome. How has it changed over the years? Obviously, it's grown. It's gotten more successful year after year. More people know about it. Has Artown itself changed or adapted over the years as people have expressed more interest?
Indeed, it has. Enter Beth McMillan on staff from almost the earliest days of Artown. But in 2001, I believe she took over, 2001. It's really been her ethos has been bring the art of the world to Reno. And that's what Artown's been able to do. You know about Artown because of that singular act and that ethos, that intention. And that's been a huge success, because think about Reno as a long established cowboy town, literally with the rodeo and with the river running through it, founded by Italian immigrants. We have culture, but I think diversity and vibrant commitment to art expression and inclusion was not part of it. And those have been the hallmarks of Beth's tenure. She's grown Artown from just those 3 weeks now to 31 full days, and also into a wraparound season called Encore, which literally when Artown ends, our Encore season starts to get ramped up. And those are fall, winter, and spring events where literally as an encore, Artown puts out some stunning art like Ladysmith Black Bombazo and many other events throughout the calendar year. So it really has become something that we work full-time year round on.
Excellent. Yeah, it's good to know that there's more than just the Artown month itself, that you guys are bringing programming and doing stuff the other parts of the year. Mm-hmm. How did you come to be involved in the art scene in Reno? Are you from Reno originally? Have you always been involved in the arts? What's your story, and how did you get to where you are?
Yeah, good question. I born and raised in LA. I came up here for very different reasons. I was with Swigert Davis Engineering, was working on heavy civil projects up here and large TI projects. And my background is in rail systems. I worked with Kiewit on the LA Metro system as one of the 400 engineers on that. I went to UC Berkeley and studied English as well as construction management, and have had a great career for about 12 to 15 years, traveling all over the country and the world, doing large projects and rail systems as a QA/QC person, basically as a builder of rail systems. So that's been great, and that was a great thing. But my family background and my artistic background stem from my mother being an opera singer and my uncle being a jazz drummer named Leonard Lott, who was renowned in the Leimert Park district, which has now become hugely famous based on a few things. It was where Freestyle Fellowship emerged from, the hip-hop ensemble in the 90s, and they put Leimert Park back on the map. But prior to that, Miles Davis, Dizzy Gillespie, and all the greats played in the clubs around Leimert Park, which was kind of like the Harlem of the Crenshaw district of LA, where I was born and raised. So the Kwanzaa Festival brought 100,000 South Centralites to the Crenshaw district, where a parade would end at Leimert Park. Now, Leimert Park is known for the movie Collateral, where a famous scene happened in the jazz club there. And then now there's also a BET series called Leimert Park. So that I was lucky enough to be from basically the counterculture center of the Black community in LA. And that's my roots. I was involved in UC Berkeley's programming at CalX, had a show called Amadla, which means power to the people in the Xhosa language. And I also programmed at Upper and Lower Sproul, groups like Devo and Green Day. So I had a background. And when I came to Reno, I'd put some years in LA with Sean Healy Presents, which ran 17 of the largest clubs in LA, where we'd program 5 acts per night, 7 days a week at those clubs. So our competition back then was a little-known group called Golden Voice, who was running the Wiltern and several other shacks, if you know what a shack is, amphitheaters, etc. They hit upon an idea to take it to the desert. And that idea lit fire, and they created Coachella and left Sean Healy Presents in the dust. And that's my story. Yeah.
Excellent. So how did you get involved in Artown in Reno, in the arts community here in our town?
I was on a panel of judges based on my magazine involvement in the arts community, and it was called Raw, raw artists. It was a multidisciplinary art event that happened over at the Fitzgerald back in the day. I think technically it was Comro, but it was the third floor up there at Comro, which is now the Whitney Peak. And Beth was a judge, I was a judge, and Jessica Schneider was a judge. And it was a multidisciplinary experience. And Beth took a couple things away from that event. Number one, she found 2 board members, and she asked me and Jessica to both be on the board. And that was my first experience with Artown's administrative side.
So tell me about Reno Tahoe tonight, because I was doing a little research, and that's another big project that you've worked on too that I'd love to hear about.
Yeah, that was a counterculture play that started in 2009 in print as a saddle stitch, which means side staple publication at 5.5 by 8 inches, and was a free handout. Started with 16 pages, and we ended our tenure after almost 10 years at 104 pages. But it was a monthly, and it was stuff where you might see we pushed the envelope. And I don't know if I can cuss or swear, but we did things that were unheard of in the former cowboy town of Reno, which was emerging as a counterculture mecca based on its proximity to Burning Man and for its thriving iconoclastic rebel spirit that has been part of the high desert and part of the imagination of Reno for many, many years. So it certainly wasn't something that I created, but something I tapped into, and was able to build a business on it as a door knocker, literally trying to get 10 ads an issue for, not for free, but to pay whatever they could during the recession, with dreams of it being, at least a regionally known publication, which it became. We wanted it to be excellent, which it became, but we sucked early. We sucked, and we did not know we sucked, but we did. And that was a great learning process of trial by error and trial by fire. But that was founded in 2009 in February on Bob Marley's birthday. And I had built up a little following as being an oddity here, as a dreadlocked African-American with blonde dreads and a skateboard, who skateboarded with cowboy boots on and a cowboy hat. So that was something different. And somehow we were able to get 600 people to our opening event. And that was cool. But my first entree into publishing was here with a magazine called Reno Passport, which was a pocket-size grab-and-go free publication that did really well for about 3 to 5 years. So that's where I sort of cut my teeth, and I got to know about the subculture here.
Awesome. I know you brought up Burning Man, and I definitely wanted to ask you about Burning Man because it's, I think, so integral to Reno as an arts city. I've never been to Burning Man myself, but
yet you're all tatted up and bearded. You're a real hipster, dude. I don't get it.
I know. I look like I should go to Burning Man. I want to eventually. I think that the challenge for me is the duration of it, an entire week, and it's the conditions, the heat and the dust, and it just seems kind of overwhelming. Like I'm pretty rugged. I'm comfortable camping out and that kind of thing. But for some reason, Burning Man's always felt a little intimidating, especially as it's continued to grow. I think that the notion of Burning Man at like 40 or 50,000 people is totally different than the idea of like 100,000 people that it's become. And I know that I think coming back this year with, I think 60,000 or so, I think is the rumor. I don't know there's an official news or anything on it yet, but one of these days I'll make it to Burning Man eventually. But what have you seen as far as Burning Man's influence on Reno? Obviously Artown started before Burning Man was hugely popular in the Reno area. I think it existed still, but it wasn't the big destination that it is today. So where did Burning Man come into the picture in the, recent years, or during Reno's kind of like growth into an arts oriented city? How did Burning Man play into that?
I think as the major feeder city, the major depot before you get to the playa, before you make that 100-mile trek to the old Lake LaHontan area, you fuel up. And so Reno became an outpost in the sojourn. And it's been, it grew its brand from being the most irreverent and maybe quite possibly the most extreme party in the world. It's earned its stripes. It's definitely earned its critics. as well. But I think they've done an amazing job in creating an idea and delivering on something. It's hard to describe Burning Man, but its influence is incontrovertible. You can't avoid the fact that it's been a cultural, impactive statement for art and experiential realities on the entire state and the entire world. So Artown and Reno specifically has benefited from that because, you get a bunch of hedonists, seekers, spiritualists, and people who want to have a good time and challenging themselves and maybe go inside. You also get people who want to say goodbye to loved ones, then people who want to mourn, and people who want to discover. So it's been a really interesting experience that people do, and people want to do almost like a bucket list thing. So I'd keep it on your bucket list, though. It has changed, as all great ideas will, but I think they've done an admirable job in trying to push the envelopes of what people can experience in public assemblage. And I really admire the founders and for what their ideas were. As far as how human beings can mess it up, that's also an evidence. But Reno's economy is impacted incredibly by Burning Man, just because we're that way station, that major thing that you would want to fuel up, get your water, get your tent on, get your cool clothes and your hippie stuff, and go on out there and maybe all of your party favors, as it were, and go out and do something extreme and really release and have some fun. And so being associated with that, and because it is engineering and creativity along with hedonism and spiritual, awakening all in one, Reno wants to be part of that brand. Reno wants to be close to that. And because it has its own quirks and leanings that align a lot with what Burning Man is doing. Plus, some of the people from Burning Man who started it live here. So that also helps.
Yeah, that was going to be the next thing I asked you about, is how Burning Man affects Reno outside of the Burning Man season. Like, I know we have this huge impact on the economy right before and right after Burning Man. You have, tens of thousands of people passing through Reno, and they're eating at the restaurants and they're shopping at the stores and they're boosting the local economy. But outside of the Burning Man season, I think we also have, like you mentioned, some Burning Man founders or people who are actively involved in Burning Man who go year after year, who have settled in Reno. And have you found that to be something that has shaped Reno as an art city outside of the Burning Man season? I think particularly of things like the public art that we have of these, sculptures and items that were on the playa and now are here in our city. Have you found that Burning Man has an effect outside of just the Burning Man season for people, actual artists who are here and regular Burning Man attendees or involved in Burning Man, but also creating art the other, 11 months of the year?
Oh yeah, without question. It's definitely, that's almost self-evident just by the way, with the passage of time, Burning Man has become an essential part of what Reno does in preparation for the festival itself. I mean, the commercial properties like Walmart and Costco, it's their Christmas. It really is. They break records on the ramp-up weeks to Burning Man. For the Reno Tahoe International Airport, it's their busiest visitor traffic of the year, more so than any holiday, including Thanksgiving, which is typically the most heavily trafficked air, travel day in America. So so just on that alone. So how does it affect the economy? It definitely does in dollars and cents in consumption of everything from water, simple staples like water, tents, to other more vain pursuits. But I think it's part of the imagination of Reno, and I think that's been expressed in wanting to acknowledge that and its impact on the state and on the high desert, almost as a ritual and rite of passage that is accessible. And it's not like the Black Rock Desert isn't visited by hardcore Renoites. It's always been a destination for people to go and test themselves and to get away. So that's been part of it. And I think Burning Man tapped into that as well. It wasn't just a bunch of Californians and Bay Area freaks going out there. It tapped into a sensibility about what makes the desert important to the soul. So in that way, the art from Burning Man has some resonance just because of that ritual that happens. And there's some really, really great merit to the the temporary installations and the permanent found creations that get sculpted into something meaningful for at least the creator. If it resonates with the society, I don't think art can resonate with everybody, but it's certainly something that has made a sound and has a style and aesthetic impact on creatives. You know, every region needs a place and needs a there. What I think what Burning Man has done is it's allowed artists to live close by and work and make a living here from their publicly purchased and acquired art. I can name at least 5 artists that have definitely thrived from exclusively making quote unquote Burning Man art that has then been purchased as public art nationwide. There's even a piece in the Smithsonian now. And so it's important. It's an important statement. It's highly relevant artistically, whether it's your taste or not. It's certainly not something for the fine art snob, but there's some incredible engineering that goes into these pieces, and and the paintings that happen.
Yeah, I'm always impressed by the engineering piece from these large scale sculptures that have to be built and then maybe disassembled and packed into multiple trucks and then rebuilt out in the desert.
Yeah,
and just the engineering and logistical challenges involved are a whole nother level on top of the artistic creativity that goes into making these things, which I think is so impressive in completely different ways. But just I'm blown away by both the artistic side and the engineering and mechanical side of some of these pieces.
Yeah, I mean, an ex-girlfriend of mine, real quick, asked me, "What would you do if you created, an art piece?" I said, "Well, I would want it to be seen by space." And you know what? Burning Man is seen from space, so they've already fulfilled that, and that is a huge thing in my imagination. Anyway, I think they've done a great job.
Yeah, that's rad. I think that as Reno is growing and changing, I think we're trying to find what our identity is going to be in the future. So Reno's growing really fast. A lot of people are moving here. There's this big focus on tech and on luring businesses to Nevada because we have low taxes. And I wonder what role art is going to play as Reno continues to grow. Are we going to be more of an artistic city? Do we risk losing some of the local artistic interest if we are growing too much towards like the rapid suburban growth and less of kind of a downtown arts and culture kind of environment that we sometimes have right now? Where do you think Reno is going in the future, and how do you think art is going to play a role in that? Where do you see Reno as an art city in the future, and what can we do to make sure that there continues to be a place for thriving artist culture here?
People from all walks of life feel like Northern Nevada, the Lake Tahoe, Reno area is an energy center. So they're attracted to here. But there's some great things that Reno isn't that makes it a great corporate relocation place. And you can ask Edon about that. There's, as far as inventory, warehouse, taxes on your inventory, there's none of that. State taxes, there's none of that. There's land here. There's places to the square footage. There's warehouse space. I think art as an amenity is both the bait and the lure for the next of kin to an aspiring executive who might be in the tech field, who goes to this outpost from Fremont to here and has all the Bay Area amenities, and then comes to Reno and finds that it's not a wasteland, and that the quality of life is high and the cost of living is relatively, in proportion to the Bay Area, way less. So that's been I think you can certainly commute, and you can live anywhere now, but you can get so much more house and land here for a third of what you sold your Rock Ridge bungalow for in Oakland. The real estate facts about people getting four offers at 130% of ask, and us breaking records this year and in years past, the trends are there, and people want to be able to shoot guns and recreate, fish, and go dirt biking. And some people find Reno and stay in this basin because of all those physical things that you can do that you can't do. The microclimates, the elevation, the sense of possibility. I've always thought of Reno as a stem cell, that it could self-assign itself to be anything. And it's done a good job in pivoting away from the casino culture and casino economy and recreating itself on purpose during the recession and pointedly. So it's been, I think people have been looking at this and saying, wait, this is Delaware West with lakes, rivers, and streams and alpine environments. The terroir is cool, and I can get a decent beer, like stuff like that. I can go to the museum. My wife and kids can go to a good school, and I can have a yard and a dog and a gun. These are creature comforts that you just don't. There's just not as much as you would in city life, where you have, an eighth of an acre, and you smell your neighbor's barbecue, and you have no privacy. So it's a good thing, and so let's see if we can keep it going.
Yeah, I'm generally pro growth. I'm excited that people are moving to Reno. I know there's this sometimes attitude of, oh no, California's taken over, that kind of thing. I used to live in Portland, and that was also the complaint when I lived in Portland, is all these Californians are moving here. And then I moved home to Reno a few years ago, and everyone's like, oh, all these Californians are moving here. But I imagine that, like you mentioned, there's a lot of good reasons for people to move here. It's a beautiful place. The nature in the Reno area is incredible. Cost of living it's high compared to most of the country, but it's low compared to, like you said, the Bay Area. People that are moving from California, have a little extra money in their pocket probably when they move here. But I would also imagine that it is good for the arts culture. When you have people moving from these bigger, more expensive cities, those people are likely to be somewhat interested in arts and culture if they're coming from, the Bay Area. Mm-hmm. Do you think that has helped Reno become more of an arts focused city in recent years, as we've had more people moving from cities that are bigger and have more artistic opportunities coming to Reno and kind of creating those and involving themselves in the arts world here too?
Yeah, I think that there's been some retention. I think that there is the pluses outweigh the minuses, and if you need the minus to happen, you can bounce over the hill and get it all in Sacramento. Take another hour and 10 and you're in Berkeley and you're not suffering for having done so. So that feeder market traffic, because we're on the 80 and the supply chain for which this was a critical outpost, all those, naysaying things that would be in the minus column, they really could get erased with a day trip. Literally, part of my experience is to go to the Bay Area as often as I can. And I get up at 6 and go all the way to San Francisco State to get my feet in the Pacific. And then I'm back before the sun goes down. And that's just amazing when you think about that. And so you can scratch the itch to get that culture and immersion. If you're looking for that your favorite taco or something, you could just go do it in San Francisco and get back and not eat and still have dinner in the backyard here in Reno. It's so the convenience of where we are, I think nobody talks about. We're well placed. You can't really do that in other cities and go to a major city of 1 million plus people and get all that in another state. So that's huge. And plus there's Vegas. I mean, if you want to take that longer trip, you have that. You have the open expanse, and then you can go try your luck down there and get kind of like culture shock if you want it.
Right. Yeah, I don't necessarily like the comparisons between Reno and Vegas. I lived in Reno. I grew up here in Reno, and then I moved to Las Vegas when I went to college. So I lived in Reno for most of my, life as a child and teenager, and then I lived in Vegas for about 9 years. I'm pretty familiar with both cities, and they both have pluses and minuses and all of that. Mm-hmm. But as far as arts are concerned, do you think that how are the arts scenes different between Reno and Vegas? Obviously, Vegas is much more focused on the Strip and these big casinos, and it has, I think, developed more of an art scene in kind of the old downtown area. The last couple times I visited, I've seen way more sculptures and some Burning Man art and stuff like that. In recent, years or the last 10 years or whatever, do you think that Reno has established itself as something special for Nevada that has more of an arts focus or more of kind of that smaller town feel or local artists, that kind of stuff compared to the Vegas art world? And I think that probably proximity to the Bay Area versus proximity to LA might play into this as well. So Vegas has, their big city 4 hours away is Los Angeles, which is a, bigger population wise than the Bay Area. But I think that in Reno, having our 4 hour away California city being San Francisco gives us more of that counterculture and more of that art, I think, potentially compared to what Vegas is able to, glean from our California neighbors. So how do you view those comparisons, between Vegas and Reno as far as arts go?
Great question, Conor. I see Vegas attempting to catch up. It's hard. It's a more forbidding environment just by weather. So during the time when you would have peak outdoor activity in any other place in the West, it just punishes you and you seek solace indoors. So that one thing about it being inhospitable to outdoor activities during the summer is the one thing that will limit forever its growth, except for in a controlled temperature environment. So you've seen other kinds of arts thrive there, specifically major chefs in culinary arts just really, really thrive in the Vegas culture. Less so public art, more so architectural art and design. Now, as far as outsider artists, you'd have to be able to make a living to a specific kind of person living in Henderson or living in that other neighborhood that's close by. What do they call it? It starts with, what does it start with, the S?
I'm not sure. In Vegas, Summerlin is like...
Summerlin. Yeah, so unless you're serving that population with your art that can be consumed and purchased in the home, you're really going with alternative art in public, counterculture art in public there, and some creative stuff at the gallery level and the museum level, which it now has. The Nevada Museum of Art has now developed the Southern Nevada wing of what was for years, over 90 years, has been the Nevada Museum of Art here in Northern Nevada. Now they've really bridged the state, and through the work of the Sister City campaign to unite the state artistically, there's been some great strides and inroads in Vegas having a reputable art museum and art scene. And so who are those purchasers? Who are those clients? They're not the tourists, because you're not going to take the 42 million people who visit there aren't going to put that fine art piece on the plane, you know what I'm saying? And they're probably not going to want to ship it. So it's really the people who are doing exceptional architectural art, who are doing experimental restaurants, and the entire casino and strip culture that would be the purchasers. And then whatever speaks to the residential buyer. A place, an artistic community thrives when artists can live there and make a living there. And so if you can't live there and make a living there because you can't afford it, or there's no market, there's no artists, there's no art scene. So that's what's changing in Reno so rapidly, is that people are, and again, it's people, but not hordes, but the twos and fews are able to make a national sound from here. And we had the 2017 Italian Biennale winner here in Reno, and he's Marcio Decker. So we have some world-class, world-famous artists right here that can make a living with their art and get those zeros behind the dollar signs.
Yeah, I like all the public art in Reno, and that's one of the things I appreciate. I'm not a big purchaser of art. I live in a small apartment. I'm not an art collector in any kind of way, but I appreciate the art that is present for everyone in our city, that's kind of shaped the way the city looks and feels. I mentioned these big sculptures from Burning Man, but also the murals that have popped up in Reno in the last decades, especially around Midtown. We have a couple really proficient muralists in Reno who've done a ton of great work. So it's really exciting to see the look and feel of the city change. Like I said, I lived in Portland. I've lived in the Bay Area, and one of the things I've always appreciated about these bigger cities that have a reputation for being more hip or whatever is that they have street art, they have murals, they have,
Yeah.
areas you can walk around and be like just blown away by the size and scale and impressive technique of all of this outdoor art. And Reno, I think, has come so far in changing the way, especially around Midtown, that the city looks and feels. It feels like an artistic city because you walk around and you see these murals and sculptures everywhere. Do you think that's been kind of fundamental in changing the perception of Reno from being a casino town to being a kind of hipper, younger, more artistic town, is having this public art and these murals?
Yeah, and I think that's about retaining creative ideas and retaining talent. Because before, your outlet for expression might have been Portland, Seattle, San Francisco, or LA, but now if you can make a living with your creativity in your hometown and have outlets to express it, which is facilitated by organizations like Artown, like Sierra Arts, like ArtSpot Reno, and then the private building owners themselves embracing the idea of that public art expression, then you have the formula for access and inclusion and some of the great art that actually has evolved in quality for about 10 or 12 years now. But there's 90 murals in Midtown alone, so of large and small. And some are not even seen from the street. You have to go down a little alleyway and see it. So it's been interesting. And there's these tours of discovery that really make you appreciate how unique our scene is here, and that it's a real scene. It's an emerging scene. It's a burgeoning scene. It's not well established, but I think its roots are going deeper. And because the Eric Burts, the Ruby Joes, the Joe C. Rocks, the Pan Pantojas are making a living here. So they don't have to move back in with their parents. They don't have to move to a place that's more affordable for them, and they can stay here and make it actually a national name, as Eric Burke has, for himself and his art. And it is reflective of their environment, because Eric is like a historian of the expression that he puts on the walls. It's not just random streams of consciousness. It's at times very linear, sometimes very warm, but there's always a narrative and there's always a geographical connection to the story that he's putting on a wall. And that's really what makes a community.
I want to go back to Artown real quick. I know that last year it was a little different because of COVID, because of all the restrictions and stuff. How did you guys adapt Artown to deal with the challenges last year? And I know there was the Heartbeat to Heartbeat, Eye to Eye music video, which was a cool project that I know you were involved in. So what did last year look like for Artown? And then can you talk a little bit about what this year will look like, what you're looking forward to, or what you're excited about for Artown 2021, now that we're kind of coming out of pandemic life?
Yeah, there was so much uncertainty and, a real concern about public safety. Really, what makes Artown uniquely is the public assemblage, the community gathering together physically to be uplifted by art and to be inspired by performance and art of every genre. And so without that, you really don't have a festival. We pivoted to things that were virtual, and people could message and inform and expose, but they couldn't gather. So it was very deflating. But at the same time, we stayed motivated. We pivoted with the Hearttown campaign and brought art to the people so that they could be participatory. We encouraged them to create expressions of love and express their art through their heart and their heart through their art. And that was an idea that really was a placeholder in place of public assemblage and gathering. And then obviously our entire program series ourselves wasn't able to happen because of COVID. So that was a bummer. But we just having the opportunity as a staff and as a board to problem solve through a once in 100-year event was a huge opportunity for which we are so grateful. We are grateful that we learned new skills, that we used technology in new ways, and we were able to communicate the importance of art in new ways and in ways that we didn't necessarily have our sea legs or any skill sets to apply to it. So now I think we're better, more informed, and I feel closer to the staff, and to the board, just from a behind the scenes BTS standpoint, I don't know what could be thrown at us worse than this. And there are so many high points in community engagement and communication that is an art in and of itself. The art of inclusion is an art form. The art of communicative assemblages and the way you stay connected when you're still at a distance. It's almost like developing a callus. So we'll be able to use that over and over in leaner times, hopefully that don't come, but in challenges, we faced down some major things. We're so thankful that many of our sponsors stayed with us at sort of less of a sponsorship level. Some maintain their full level of sponsorship. So we want to thank the community for keeping Artown viable and letting us know and reminding us the importance of art to the spirit.
What are you excited about for this year? So we had all the challenges last year. You learned a lot along the way. And it seems like this year things are not completely normal, but it sounds like there's going to be in-person gathering, that you have this new space in Rancho San Rafael. So we're getting in person again. So what do you think Artown is going to look like this year? Are some of the lessons from last year still going to be factored in? Is there still going to be this kind of online component now that you have the skills and the experience in that? What do you expect from the upcoming Artown season?
Yes, great question. It's really been an opportunity for leadership, and that leadership is planning and then doing. So, and being able to communicate that. So Beth, our executive director, Beth McMillan, who again has been with Artown over 20 years and literally seen it all. We had to pivot again to something that would be a safe assemblage with a positive affirmation that we are going to assemble this year in however many numbers and ways that we can safely for the public's health. But that the spirit part would be what we would be messaging to, because the intention of putting together programming for 31 days at a host location, we wanted to make a bigger net and a bigger tent. So literally the acreage over at Rancho San Rafael is much bigger than our normal host location, which is Wingfield. So we could get as many as 530 6-foot by 6-foot square foot pods, 36 square feet pods, 6 feet distance minimum in all directions, some as much as 18 feet away from the nearest pod. All of that we could do at Rancho. And so then it was putting stage light and sound, putting the logistics together and getting the programming, the rollover programming from our festival season that didn't happen, and making that happen, and then filling in the gaps from artists who couldn't do it, who just aren't touring yet. So that's been a challenge. We are really literally a 24/7, 365 day a year organization that needed to really have our heads on, throughout the pandemic to get people excited that Artown is coming. And because people want to tell you that, oh, you're not having Artown this year. And so there's almost this assumption that Artown isn't happening. So that was a messaging and marketing problem. So we wanted to tell them where we're doing it and how we're doing it and why we're doing it and in what manner we're doing that. That leads us up to our Media Week, May 3rd through 7th, where the first of its kind will be able to message for an entire week in detail all the nuances and all the details and the programming, the headliners and highlights for Artown 2021, and all the different ways that we will Artown this year. We wanted Artown to be expected, anticipated, welcomed, and attended. So we think the excitement around Artown is coming is a great message. But then we want everybody to Artown. So our tagline for the Media Week and moving into the festival is Everybody Artown. Almost think of CNC Music Factory. Everybody Artown. You know what I'm saying? So that's that's corny. I almost pulled that off. But anyway, so just think about that for a minute, that everybody's going to Artown. And we can Artown at literally dozens and scores of places, and that artists will be able to sell, expose, and celebrate their art, celebrate being together with their fan base. People will be able to commune together. And there's a great restorative healing element to art that is really unspoken, but it's self-evident.
What else? What else is going on in the art world in Reno that people should know about?
Reno is excitedly changing. I think there's going to be and we're witnessing it, more public art expressions in the forms of murals and public work. You're going to see more culinary art advancements and bespoke art. You're seeing that. You're seeing the influence of Squaw, Martis Camp, Old Truckee, and Heavenly. You're seeing that in Reno now. You're seeing it in architecture, in programming, in intention and design. It's really kind of exciting to see the region becoming a super region, the way a stem cell populates with other cells in an organ printer to create a full organ. I don't know if you've ever seen that process of organ printing, but it's fascinating. It's fascinating. And you'll see this proliferation of like and like creating a big body that didn't exist before when the parts were disparate and separated. So what you're seeing is more collaborative art, more collaborative intention, more the distance between the corporation and the working artist is shrinking. And that's exciting. That's a movement that doesn't get any press, doesn't get any radio time, because it's not a headline. It's like a quiet phenomenon that we're seeing at the ground level.
How do you think it's going so far? Do you think that there's a lot of advancement that way, that we are turning into kind of a regional artistic center, and it's not just the people that were here already, that we're incorporating a lot of new things?
It's relative. The new is that there's new people coming in, and longtime residents are engaging with them. And what I mean by that is, think about what if art is the bait and the lure for retention of talent, or just at least recreational amenities. Think about recreation to be recreated. So you want to be uplifted outside of your 9 to 5. So how are you seeing that? You're seeing on the streets, you referenced the murals. You're seeing that with recreational opportunities. You're seeing that with outdoor activities. Then you're seeing that with the reemergence of theater culture and exhibits, concerts, performances. All of that, as we emerge out of COVID, it could be one of the more electric times for our psyches that we've had. I think there's a great gratitude and appreciation. But one of the things I've been watching is the way EDON has integrated art within its recruitment and relocation messaging, because that is what the family needs to know about. What can we do as a family? What's there to do here? Isn't that what you think about when you go out somewhere to another town, say Portland? You'd really want to know what's there to do. Like, what am I doing when I'm going to San Francisco? What am I doing so I think that's becoming more known. But again, we're still getting there. There's really no there unless you consider the Truckee River our place. So creating more points of reference for both art and art consumption and experience is the challenge for Reno that it has. And that takes a concerted effort from city government and from the artists themselves to make themselves relevant.
Absolutely. For people who want to stay in touch with the arts community or have a better idea of what's going on, so those people you're talking about that are visiting or moving to Reno, what resources would you point them to? If I, had a friend who was moving here, who would I tell them to talk to, or what website would I have them visit, or what Facebook would I have them follow? Just kind of what's the easiest way for people who are listening to kind of plug into the arts community in Reno?
Good question. I love this. Great interview, by the way. Let's go with the bookends. The essential visit is the Nevada Museum of Art, Wednesday through Sunday. Plan to be there for hours because there's just world-class stuff. It really is our own little Norton Simon Museum of Art, which is known in Pasadena on Colorado Avenue. It is that. It's not LACMA. It's not the LA County Museum of Art, but it is the best of the best that we have curatorially. I think they do some incredible things over there, and your child can be educated and in class, and you can be inspired from literally the top rooftop all the way down to the first floor, from culinary to rooftop vista and everything in between, with their permanent collections and with their traveling exhibits. You want to go into the Nevada Museum of Art, and then you want to get on the streets of Reno and go to ArtSpot Reno and check out a mural tour. Get a guided, curated mural tour of either Midtown or downtown Reno. And everything in between is a little bit more adventurous. But if you are adventurous, I recommend the Potentialist Workshop. What Pan Pantoja is doing over there is incredible. Check into what's happening with the McKinley Arts and Culture Center down here in the Pounding District. And if you're new to Reno, just get out and walk the River Walk. Take some time and go from Wingfield Park to Idlewild Park, and you'll fall in love with Reno. And you'll not want to leave. And you do it now while there's all this foliage and it's beautiful green and the water's high in the river. And you'll be like, this is Reno. Okay, I get it.
Yeah, it's a beautiful time of year right now. And I live actually in the Pounding District, right, kind of off Riverside. So I'm so grateful for this neighborhood and the ability to walk downtown and see public art and have a city that has that, that walkability and that feeling of there are people out doing things. There's public art. I think that Reno is growing and thriving in a way that's really exciting. And I'm really glad that art is a fundamental part of that growth and kind of really built into our DNA at this point. I think after 26 years of Artown, of many years of Burning Man being a major destination, I'm really glad that art seems to be hopefully here to stay as a big part of what Reno is.
It is, and that's true. And I think more to come, more to come. Look at what Vivian Zavataro is doing at the Lilly Museum at the UNR campus, the $38 million art and performance structure there. It is beautiful. The Lilly Museum. You're going to see their permanent exhibit. And then right now, Leonore Feeney, the great surrealist female painter, is being exhibited through May. And you just can't miss that. Go take that walking tour. And that's in the Central Campus. And you can't miss that. Free parking on the weekends as well.
Excellent. Where can people find out more about Artown? So if people want to know about the updates, things that are coming up in the next few weeks, I know you're on this big push to get the word out that everyone Artown. So how can people stay in the loop on what's going on with Artown in the few short couple months between now and when it starts?
I'm glad you're asking that because I have some information for you. It just really simply starts at artown.org, ARTOWN.org. And that's really the place where people discover Artown first. And we're right now in the midst of a Build a Stage campaign where it's costing over $400,000 this year to make our festival footprint happen for stage lighting, sound security, and parking and staffing up there at Rancho San Rafael. So we're on a capital campaign. We've raised about half of the money needed. So we're asking everybody to go support Artown, support art in your community, and support really one of the foundational legacy events every summer.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to tell me a little bit about Artown and the art scene in Reno in general. I was really excited about doing an art episode, and I'm glad that I got to talk to you all about how Reno integrates art into our city and makes it a part of what we are.
Thanks so much. It's been a pleasure, Conor. I appreciate it.
Listeners, thank you again for tuning into Renoites, and special thanks to Oliver X from Artown and all of the Artown folks for bringing this event to us every year. Again, check out artown.org, ARTOWN.org to learn more. Before we go, quick reminder, if you are enjoying the podcast, I would love for you to leave me a review on your podcast app of choice. I should be on all of the podcast apps, Apple Podcasts especially. If you could leave me that 5 stars and let people know how much you enjoy the show, it really helps them find us, and I appreciate it. That's all I've got for you this week. See you next time.